There she stood, Tiffany Rhodes, my daughter-in-law, smiling sweetly in front of a dining table set for 14 people. 12 of them were her relatives, none of whom had lifted a finger to prepare a single thing. "I figured you'd cook, Loretta," Tiffany said, laughing lightly as she set down a bottle of bargain wine. "I mean, you're so good at that kind of stuff." I stood in my own kitchen, staring at the pile of grocery bags I had bought with my retirement money, pots I had already scrubbed for the third time that day, and the turkey that hadn't even been thawed yet because no one had told me guests were coming. Tiffany breezed by me with a fake compliment about how adorable my apron looked, and in front of everyone, her aunts, cousins, some man named Uncle Bobby I had never seen before. She clapped her hands and said, "Loretta, sweetie, chop chop. We've got hungry mouths to feed." The whole room laughed. I didn't. I looked her dead in the eye, took a deep breath, and said, "I'm not your cook. I'm not your maid. And I'm done." 3 years earlier, I'd been contentedly living my life as a 65-year-old retired high school English teacher in my modest but cherished home in Boise, Idaho. The house had belonged to my mother before me, a 2-story craftsman with honey-colored hardwood floors that creaked in all the familiar places. Every corner held memories, the notches on the kitchen doorframe where we'd measured my son Caleb's height, the small burn mark on the dining room table from when my late husband Robert accidentally set down a hot pan without a trivet. After Robert passed away from heart failure 5 years earlier, I'd finally found my rhythm again. I volunteered at the library on Tuesdays, tended to my garden of heirloom tomatoes and sweet peas, and hosted a small book club for other retired teachers. It wasn't exciting, but it was mind-peaceful, predictable, and dignified. Then came the phone call that changed everything. "Mom?" Caleb's voice sounded strained. "Can I come over? I need to talk to you about something." An hour later, my only son sat at my kitchen table, his shoulders slumped. At 36, he looked boyish still, with Robert's gentle eyes and my stubborn chin. "I lost my job," he said. "Budget cuts. The whole department got axed." I reached across the table to squeeze his hand. "Oh, honey." "I'm so sorry. There's more," he continued. "Tiffany's online boutique isn't doing well either. We can't make the rent next month." I'd met Tiffany 2 years earlier, when Caleb brought her home to announce their engagement after only 6 months of dating. She was beautiful in that polished way that required constant maintenance, gleaming highlighted hair, sculptured nails, and clothes that always looked fresh from the store. She'd been cordial but distant with me, asking few questions about my life while talking extensively about her business, her dreams, her plans for their future. "We were thinking," Caleb continued, his eyes not quite meeting mine, "maybe we could stay here, just until we get back on our feet." 3 months tops, I hesitated. The house felt perfectly sized for one-person cozy rather than empty. But this was my son. And what kind of mother would I be if I didn't help when he needed it most? "Of course," I said. "You know you're always welcome here." The gratitude in his eyes warmed my heart. I'd made the right decision, I was sure of it. They moved in the following weekend. 2 bedrooms upstairs, mine, and the guest room that used to be Caleb's childhood bedroom. I helped them settle in, ignoring the way Tiffany's nose wrinkled slightly when she saw the dated floral wallpaper in their room. "We can redecorate a bit, right?" she asked, not really waiting for an answer. The first few weeks were an adjustment, but manageable. I enjoyed having Caleb around again, hearing his laughter, watching old movies together like we used to. Tiffany was busy with her online business, often hunched over her laptop at the dining room table. She was polite, if somewhat detached. But small changes began accumulating. First, it was the kitchen. "I organized your spice rack," Tiffany announced one morning. "It makes more sense alphabetically than however you had them." I'd had them arranged by frequency of use, the ones I reached for most often, right in front. But I thanked her anyway. Then came the living room. Furniture rearrangement for better feng shui. And new towels in the bathroom because the old ones didn't match the shower curtain. My routines shifted to accommodate theirs. My quiet mornings with coffee and crosswords were now punctuated by Tiffany's business calls. My evening reading was often drowned out by whatever reality show she followed. 3 months came and went. Caleb found a new job, but it paid less than his previous position. Tiffany's business was just about to take off, she assured us. They needed more time. 6 months stretched into a year. The temporary arrangement developed roots. Tiffany began inviting friends over without asking. Suddenly, I'd find 4 or 5 strangers in my living room on a Tuesday night, drinking wine and laughing loudly. When I mentioned it to Caleb, he shrugged. She's just trying to network for her business. Mom, it's important. On my birthday, 14 months after they'd moved in, I came home from my book club to find the kitchen a disaster, dirty dishes piled high, wine glasses with lipstick marks, crumbs everywhere. A note on the counter read, "Had some friends over. Too tired to clean up. You don't mind, right? Thanks." I cleaned it all up myself, fighting back tears as I scrubbed dried food from my mother's heirloom serving platter. The tipping point came during the holidays. I'd always hosted a small, intimate Christmas dinner, just family, and perhaps one or two close friends. But one December afternoon, Tiffany breezed into the kitchen while I was baking cookies. "So I've invited my family for Christmas dinner," she announced. My parents, my sister and her husband, 2 aunts, 3 cousins, my Uncle Bobby, and my grandparents. 12 in total. I nearly dropped my rolling pin. 12 people? Tiffany, that's... I told them what an amazing cook you are, she continued, scrolling through her phone. "Don't worry about dessert, Brenda's bringing some pies from the grocery store. Oh, and we should use the good china. Where do you keep it again?" The good china was my mother's wedding set, used only for the most special occasions. I felt my chest tighten. "Tiffany, I don't think I can cook for that many people." And I had planned a smaller gathering. She looked up from her phone, eyebrows raised. "Oh, I didn't realize you had other plans for your own house." The sarcasm in her voice was unmistakable. "That's not what I meant. Look, they're already coming. It's done." She turned away, then added over her shoulder, "We're family, right? Isn't that what you're always saying?" That night I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. How had I become a stranger in my own home? When had I surrendered my voice, my boundaries, my dignity? I thought of my mother, who had lived in this house until her final days. Strong-willed, principled, unwavering. She would never have allowed herself to be treated this way. Before she died, she had handed me a sealed envelope. "Don't open this," she had said, "until the day you feel like you don't belong in your own home. That's when you'll need to read it." For 2 years, that envelope had sat in my jewelry box, untouched. Now I reached for it with trembling fingers, wondering what wisdom from beyond the grave might help me reclaim what I had lost. The envelope felt heavier than paper should. My mother's handwriting, elegant cursive that slanted slightly to the right, spelled out my name, Loretta. Below it, in smaller letters, "To be opened only when necessary." I ran my finger under the seal, careful not to tear what was inside. The letter was dated 3 months before her death, when she was already ill but still sharp as ever. "My dearest Loretta, if you're reading this, then something has gone wrong. You feel like a visitor in the house that's been your home for decades. Someone has made you small in the place where you should feel largest. I've lived long enough to see how the world treats aging women, especially kind ones. We become convenient, then invisible, then burdensome. I won't let that happen to you in this house that I've worked my whole life to provide. What you hold now is not just a letter but a legal document, prepared with the help of my dear friend, Judge Anthony Delgado. He knows to expect your call if this envelope is ever opened. This house, every nail, every floorboard is yours alone. No one may claim residence here without your express written consent, renewable annually. No one may make decisions about this property except you. This is not just my wish. It is legally binding. Being kind doesn't mean being a doormat, Loretta. Being loving doesn't mean being exploited. Remember who you are. My daughter, a woman of dignity, deserving of respect. Call Anthony. He'll know what to do." With all my love and strength, Mom enclosed was a notarized legal document, complex with legal terminology but clear in its intent. My mother had indeed set up protections I never knew existed. At the bottom was Judge Delgado's phone number, written in my mother's hand. I sat on my bed for a long time, the papers in my lap, tears streaming down my face. Not tears of sadness, but of recognition. My mother had seen this coming somehow. She had known I might one day need to be rescued from my own generosity. The next morning, I called the number, Judge Delgado's office. A crisp voice answered. "This is Loretta Jacobs," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "I need to speak with the judge about a personal matter involving my mother, Eleanor Jacobs." There was a pause. "One moment, please." Seconds later, a deep, warm voice came on the line. "Loretta, Anthony Delgado here. I've been wondering if I'd ever hear from you." I opened my mother's letter, I said simply. "I see." His tone grew solemn. "Then things must be difficult. Can you come to my office tomorrow? 10 o'clock? I agreed and spent the rest of the day in a strange, calm state. I made lunch for myself, worked in my garden, and acted normally when Caleb and Tiffany came home. But inside, something had shifted. I was no longer just waiting for things to improve. I was reclaiming what was mine. The next day, Judge Delgado, a distinguished man in his 70s with silver hair and kind eyes, listened as I explained the situation. He nodded occasionally, taking notes, his expression growing increasingly concerned. "Your mother was a remarkable woman," he said when I finished. "We served on the library board together for 15 years. She talked about you often with great pride." He picked up the document I'd brought. "This is legally sound. Your mother made sure of that. The house is yours alone, and you have every right to determine who lives in it and under what conditions." "What do I do now?" I asked. "That depends," he said gently. "What do you want, Loretta?" The question caught me off guard. What did I want? I'd been so focused on keeping the peace, on not disappointing Caleb, on tolerating Tiffany, that I'd stopped considering my own wants and needs entirely. My voice faltered, then strengthened. "I want my home back. I want to be respected in it. I want peace." Judge Delgado nodded. "Then that's what we'll work toward. I suggest we start with a formal letter outlining expectations and boundaries. If those aren't respected, we move to a legal notice to vacate. And if that doesn't work?" His eyes met mine steadily. "Then I come to your house personally and enforce your mother's wishes. But let's hope it doesn't come to that." That evening, as I prepared dinner meatloaf, Caleb's favorite, I felt a strange mix of sadness and resolve. I loved my son. I wanted him to be happy. But I couldn't continue sacrificing my dignity, my peace, my very self on the altar of his comfort. As we ate, I noticed how Tiffany dominated the conversation, how Caleb deferred to her, how neither of them asked me a single question about my day. I was furniture to them, useful but unremarkable. "I need to talk to you both," I said during a rare pause. Tiffany glanced up from her phone. "Can it wait?" "I'm in the middle of messaging a potential client." "No," I said firmly. "It can't." Something in my tone made them both look at me with surprise. "I've been thinking about our living arrangement," I began. "It's been almost a year and a half now." "Mom, if this is about money," Caleb started. "It's not about money," I interrupted. "It's about respect. It's about boundaries." I outlined as calmly as I could the ways in which I'd felt sidelined in my own home. The uninvited guests, the rearranged furniture, the expectations that I would clean up messes I hadn't made. And now, I concluded, there's apparently going to be a Christmas dinner for 14 people that I'm expected to cook, serve, and clean up after without having been consulted. Tiffany rolled her eyes. "I thought you'd be happy to have a full house for the holidays. Isn't that what mothers want?" "What I want," I said carefully, "is to be asked, not told. To be included in decisions about my own home. To be treated like a person, not a convenience." "You're being dramatic," Tiffany said with a dismissive wave. "Family helps family. That's all this is." I looked at Caleb, hoping for support, but he stared at his plate. "I'm asking you both to respect some basic boundaries going forward," I continued. "If you can't do that, then perhaps it's time to consider other living arrangements." Tiffany's laugh was sharp. "Other arrangements? Like what?" "It's not like we can afford to move right now." "That's not my problem to solve," I said, surprising myself with my firmness. "Wow." Tiffany pushed back from the table. "Just wow. After everything we've done for you." "For me?" I felt heat rise in my face. "What exactly have you done for me, Tiffany?" "We keep you company. We help around the house. You've taken over my house," I corrected her. "You've invited strangers into it without asking. You've rearranged my things, used my resources, and treated me like I should be grateful for the privilege." She stood up, face flushed. "I can't believe how selfish you're being right now." "Come on, Caleb, say something to your mother." Caleb looked miserable, caught between us. "Mom, I'm sure Tiffany didn't mean to upset you. We appreciate everything you do." "That's just it," I said sadly. "You don't appreciate it. You expect it." Tiffany grabbed her phone. "This is ridiculous. I'm going out." "Don't wait up." After she slammed the door, Caleb and I sat in silence. "She doesn't mean to be." "Like that," he finally said. "She's just stressed about her business." "And I'm stressed about being treated like a servant in my own home," I replied. "Caleb, when was the last time either of you asked how I was doing? When was the last time you noticed I'm a person with needs and feelings?" He had no answer. As the days passed, nothing changed. Tiffany continued as if our conversation had never happened. Caleb avoided conflict by avoiding home altogether, working late, stopping for drinks with colleagues. And I continued feeling like a ghost in my own house, watching as Christmas approached and with it, the dreaded dinner that would either break me or force me to stand up for myself once and for all. Christmas Eve arrived with a dusting of snow that made Boise look like a postcard. I woke early, as I always did, to enjoy the quiet hours before the house stirred. This morning, though, I had a plan. I made myself a cup of tea and dialed Judge Delgado's number. Anthony. It's Loretta. I think it's time. 2 hours later, I was in his office finalizing the details. The judge, in his dignified way, reassured me that I was doing the right thing. Your mother would be proud, he said, patting my hand. Standing up for yourself doesn't make you cruel, it makes you strong. We agreed he would come to the house the following day during the Christmas dinner. The timing wasn't accidental. If I was going to reclaim my dignity, it needed to be witnessed by the same people who had seen it slowly stripped away. Are you sure you want to do it this way? Judge Delgado asked. It will certainly make an impression. That's exactly what I want, I replied, surprising myself with my resolve. An impression that won't be forgotten. When I returned home, the house was already in disarray. Tiffany had apparently been prepping for the dinner, which meant leaving ingredients scattered across every countertop while she chatted on the phone with a friend. Oh, good. You're back, she said, barely glancing up. We're out of butter. And the guest bathroom needs cleaning before everyone arrives. I set down my purse. I bought groceries 3 days ago. The butter was in the refrigerator door, she shrugged. I guess we used it all. Oh, and Brenda called. She can't bring those pies after all. So you'll need to handle dessert too. Of course. I took a deep breath. Where's Caleb? I asked. Last-minute Christmas shopping? She rolled her eyes. He always waits until the 24th. Oh, I forgot to tell you Uncle Bobby is bringing his new girlfriend, so that's one more plate. 15 people now. And still not one offer to help with the cooking, the cleaning, the preparations. Just expectations that I would handle it all without complaint. I spent the day in a strange state of calm determination. I cleaned, I cooked. I set the table with my mother's china. But inside, I was steeling myself for what was to come. Caleb returned late in the afternoon, laden with shopping bags. Need any help, Mom? He asked, the offer hollow as he was already heading upstairs. I've got it, I said. I always did. By 6 o'clock, the house was ready. The tree glittered with ornaments collected over decades. The ham was in the oven, filling the house with a rich, savory scent. The table was set beautifully, each place marked with a handwritten name card, including one for Judge Anthony Delgado. Tiffany emerged from upstairs, dressed in a festive red sweater and dark jeans, looking fresh and rested. I, meanwhile, had been on my feet since dawn, my back aching, a thin sheen of perspiration on my forehead despite the December chill. Wow, the place looks great, she said, as if complimenting a hotel staff. Oh, you used the good china. Perfect. The doorbell rang at 6:30. Tiffany's parents arrived first, polite but distant people who had never quite warmed to me. Then came her sister and brother-in-law, the aunts, the cousins, Uncle Bobby with his girlfriend, a woman half his age who seemed uncomfortable in her too-tight dress. Tiffany's grandparents, stooped but sharp-eyed, completed the group. Introductions were made. Drinks were poured. The noise level rose as everyone talked over each other, making themselves at home in my living room. I noticed how no one offered to help bring out appetizers, how Tiffany presented me to her extended family almost as an afterthought. This is Caleb's mom. She lives here too. As if I were the house guest, rather than the homeowner. At 7:15, the doorbell rang again. Tiffany frowned. Are we expecting someone else? I nodded, straightening my shoulders. Yes, a friend of the family. I opened the door to Judge Delgado, imposing in his dark overcoat, a sealed envelope in his gloved hand. Judge, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Thank you for coming. The living room quieted as he entered. There's something about a judge that commands attention, even out of his robes. Or perhaps it was his grave expression, the formality of his bearing, that alerted everyone that this was no ordinary dinner guest. Who's this? Tiffany asked, her voice pitched higher than usual. Judge Anthony Delgado, I said calmly. A dear friend of my mother's and mine. Confusion crossed her face. I don't understand. Why is a judge here for Christmas dinner? Actually, Judge Delgado said, his voice deep and authoritative, I'm here on official business concerning this house and its rightful occupancy. A hush fell over the room. Caleb stepped forward, his face pale. Mom, what's going on? I met his eyes steadily. Something that should have happened long ago. Judge Delgado cleared his throat. I have here a document left in my care by Eleanor Jacobs, Loretta's mother and the previous owner of this property. He held up the envelope. She instructed me to present it if and when her daughter felt it necessary. Tiffany laughed nervously. This is a joke, right? Some kind of Christmas prank? I assure you, Mrs. Rhodes, this is no joke. Judge Delgado broke the seal on the envelope and unfolded the papers inside. This is a legally binding document establishing that this property belongs solely to Loretta Jacobs, with specific provisions regarding who may reside here and under what conditions. He began to read aloud. This house was built with dignity. It shall never become a place where my daughter is disrespected. Anyone who treats Loretta Jacobs like a servant will no longer be welcome here. Tiffany's face flushed crimson. This is ridiculous. We live here too. We have rights. Actually, Judge Delgado continued, the document specifically states that no occupants other than Loretta Jacobs may claim residency rights without her express written consent, to be renewed annually. To my knowledge, no such written agreement exists. Caleb looked stricken. Mom, why didn't you just talk to us about this? I tried, I said softly. 2 weeks ago. You didn't listen. So what does this mean? Tiffany demanded, her voice rising. You're kicking us out? On Christmas? It means, Judge Delgado interjected, that Mrs. Jacobs has the legal right to determine who lives in her home and under what conditions. And according to this document, she also has sole discretion over the family trust established by her mother. Gasps rippled through the room. Tiffany's parents exchanged glances. Her relatives shifted uncomfortably. What family trust? Tiffany asked, her voice suddenly small. A modest but significant sum, Judge Delgado replied, set aside for Loretta's benefit and, at her discretion, for the benefit of her descendants, provided they treat her with the respect she deserves. The implications hung in the air. Not only could I determine their living situation, but I also controlled a financial resource they hadn't known existed, one that Caleb, as my only child, would have eventually inherited if things had gone differently. Tiffany turned to me, her expression a mix of anger and calculation. Loretta, there's clearly been a misunderstanding. We've always respected you. This is your home, of course. We've never said otherwise. Stop. My voice was quiet but firm. Just stop. For once, be honest. You've treated me like an inconvenience in my own home. You've taken advantage of my generosity. You've disrespected me in 100 small ways, and some not so small. I looked around at the assembled guest strangers in my living room, eating food I'd prepared, using dishes I'd washed, enjoying warmth I'd paid for all without a word of thanks or an offer to help. And tonight was the final straw. 15 people. No warning. No consideration. Just expectations that I would serve you all without complaint. Uncle Bobby coughed uncomfortably. Someone muttered something about family drama. Tiffany's mother stared at her plate. So what happens now? Caleb asked, his voice breaking slightly. I turned to him, my heart heavy but my resolve firm. Now you and Tiffany have a choice. You can stay, but only if you acknowledge that this is my home and I deserve respect within it. Or you can leave and find your own place, where you make your own rules. Tiffany's laugh was bitter. And the trust? I suppose that's contingent on us bowing down to you too? The trust, I said evenly, is for family who acts like family, who gives as well as takes. Who understands that love without respect isn't love at all, it's exploitation. Judge Delgado folded the papers and placed them back in the envelope. Mrs. Jacobs has authorized me to give you 30 days to make your decision and arrangements. After that time, if no agreement has been reached, you will be required to vacate the premises. He handed the envelope to me. The choice is yours, but the house is hers. The silence that followed was deafening. Tiffany's relatives began murmuring among themselves. Her father stood abruptly. I think we should go, he said stiffly. This is clearly a private family matter. One by one, they gathered their coats and purses, muttering awkward thanks and avoiding my eyes. Within minutes, the house had emptied of everyone except Caleb, Tiffany, Judge Delgado, and me. Well, Tiffany said, her voice trembling with rage, this was quite the Christmas surprise. humiliating us in front of my entire family. No, I corrected her. This was about ending my own humiliation. The humiliation of being invisible in my own home. Caleb looked from her to me, his expression anguished. We can work this out, can't we? We're family. That's exactly what we need to remember, I said. All of us. Judge Delgado left shortly after, pressing my hand warmly as he departed. Call me if you need anything, he murmured. Anything at all. Then it was just the three of us, standing in the wreckage of the Christmas dinner that never happened. The ham still warmed in the oven. The candles on the table had burned halfway down. Outside, snow continued to fall silently, indifferent to the drama within these walls. Tiffany was the first to break the silence. I can't believe you did this. On Christmas Eve, in front of my entire family. Her voice shook with fury. Do you have any idea how this makes us look? I don't think that's the issue here, Tiffany, I said calmly. The issue is how you've been treating me. She threw up her hands. Oh, please. We've been nothing but gracious guests in your home. We've included you in our lives, our plans. No, I interrupted. You've consumed my home, my resources, my time. You've given orders instead of asking questions. You've treated me like an employee rather than family. Caleb stepped between us, his face drawn. This isn't helping. Can we just talk about this rationally? Mom, what exactly do you want from us? I considered the question carefully. What did I want? Not revenge. Not to hurt my son, just peace, respect, acknowledgement. I want to be seen, I said finally. I want to be asked, not told. I want to be treated like a person whose feelings and preferences matter in her own home, Tiffany scoffed. This is so melodramatic. We're talking about dinner plans and furniture arrangements, not some great moral crisis. We're talking about dignity, I corrected her. About the slow erosion of respect that happens so gradually you barely notice until one day, you're standing in your own kitchen being ordered to cook for people you've never met. Caleb ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so like his father's it made my heart ache. Mom, if we've made you feel that way, I'm sorry, truly. But this... He gestured toward the door where Judge Delgado had exited. This feels extreme. Why didn't you just tell us how you felt? I did, I said softly. 2 weeks ago. You dismissed it. Both of you did. He had the grace to look ashamed. I should have listened better. Yes, I agreed. You should have. Tiffany paced the living room, her arms crossed tightly across her chest. So what now? You're going to hold this trust over our heads like some kind of behavioral bribe? Be nice to Mommy or no inheritance for you? The cruelty of her words hung in the air. Caleb winced. Tiffany, don't. Don't what? She snapped. Don't point out the obvious power play happening here. She's using money to control us, Caleb. Can't you see that? I watched her, this woman my son had chosen, and felt a deep sadness. Had she always been this way and I'd been too eager to see the best in her? Or had something hardened her over time? This isn't about money, I said. The trust is small enough to help in emergencies, maybe fund a grandchild's education someday. But not enough to live on. Not enough to justify the way you've treated me. Caleb looked at me with pleading eyes. Can we start over? Can we try to make this work? Before I could answer, Tiffany grabbed her coat from the rack by the door. I need some air. I can't even process this right now. The door slammed behind her with such force that one of the Christmas ornaments fell from the tree and shattered on the hardwood floor. Caleb stared at the broken pieces. I should go after her. Yes, I said. You probably should. He hesitated, clearly torn. Mom, I never meant for things to get this way. You know that, right? I nodded. I know. But they did get this way. And ignoring it won't fix anything. After he left, I sat alone at the beautifully set table for 15, the food growing cold, the candles burning lower. I felt hollow, exhausted, but also lighter somehow, as if a weight I'd been carrying for months had finally been set down. I began to clear the table, one plate at a time. Tomorrow would bring more conversations, more decisions. But tonight, I had spoken my truth. I had reclaimed my voice. And whatever happened next, I would face it standing tall in the home my mother had left me, not as a servant, but as its rightful owner. The next morning, Christmas Day, dawned bright and clear, the fresh snow glistening in the sunlight. I woke early, as was my habit, and made a pot of coffee. The house was silent. Caleb and Tiffany hadn't returned the night before. I was halfway through my first cup when the front door opened. Caleb entered alone, looking exhausted, his clothes rumpled as if he'd slept in them. "Merry Christmas," I said softly. He attempted a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Merry Christmas, Mom. Coffee?" He nodded gratefully, and I poured him a cup, adding the splash of cream he'd preferred since college. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table, the silence between us not comfortable but not hostile either. "Tiffany stayed at her parents'," he finally said. "She's pretty upset," I nodded. "I imagine so." "Mom, I need you to understand something." He leaned forward, his eyes serious. "I love her, with all her flaws, just like Dad loved you with all of yours." The comparison stung, but I let him continue. "But I love you too. And I hate being caught in the middle like this." I reached across the table and took his hand. "I never wanted to put you there. But Caleb, loving someone doesn't mean letting them walk all over you. Your father and I had our differences, but we respected each other. Can you honestly say Tiffany respects me?" He couldn't meet my eyes. "She has her own way of showing affection." "That's not what I asked," he sighed heavily. "No, probably not as much as she should." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the admission hanging between us. "What do you want to do?" I finally asked. He looked up, surprised. "You're asking me?" "Yes. This is your life too, Caleb. I won't dictate your choices. But I will insist on being treated with respect in my own home." He nodded slowly. "That's fair. More than fair." He took a deep breath. I think we need to find our own place. Not because I'm angry with you, but because it's time. It's been time for a while now." Relief washed over me, not because he was leaving, but because he understood. "I think that's wise," I said. "I'll talk to Tiffany. We'll start looking after the holidays." He hesitated. Will you help us? Maybe with a security deposit or first month's rent? Just to get started?" I smiled gently. "Of course. That's what family does. We help each other when it's needed. Not because we have to, but because we want to." He seemed to relax slightly. "Thank you. And Caleb," I added, "you're always welcome here. For dinner, for visits, for advice. This is still your childhood home. But as a visitor who respects the space, not as someone who assumes control of it." He nodded. "I understand." We spent the rest of Christmas Day quietly. He called Tiffany, who refused to return to the house while I was there, a childish stance, but one I could weather. Caleb and I opened our gifts to each other, ate leftover ham sandwiches, and watched It's a Wonderful Life, as we had every Christmas since he was a boy. It wasn't the holiday either of us had planned. But it was honest. And in that honesty, I felt the first tender shoots of healing begin to emerge from the frozen ground of our relationship. Over the next few weeks, true to his word, Caleb began apartment hunting. Tiffany remained cold, speaking to me only when absolutely necessary, her words clipped and formal. I didn't push for false reconciliation. Some bridges take time to rebuild, if they can be rebuilt at all. I provided the security deposit for a small 2-bedroom apartment across town, as I had promised. I helped them pack, gave them some of my extra kitchenware, even offered furniture from the guest room. Tiffany declined everything except the money, the day they moved out exactly 27 days after. Christmas, I stood in the doorway as they loaded the last boxes into their car. "Take care of each?" "Other," I said. Caleb hugged me tightly. "We will. And I'll call you tomorrow." Tiffany gave a stiff nod, not quite meeting my eyes. As they drove away, I felt a complex mixture of emotions: sadness, relief, uncertainty, hope. That evening, as I walked through my quiet house, I realized something profound. This wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. A chance to rediscover who I was when I wasn't defined by what others needed from me. I called Judge Delgado to update him on the situation. "They moved out peacefully," I told him. "No legal intervention needed." "I'm glad to hear it," he said warmly. "Your mother would be proud of how you handled this, Loretta. It takes courage to stand up for yourself, especially against family." "I'm still processing it all," I admitted. "Part of me feels guilty." "Don't," he said firmly. "You didn't ask for anything unreasonable. Just respect. We all deserve that much." After we hung up, I went to the guest room, Caleb and Tiffany's room, until earlier that day. Already I was making plans to reclaim it. Perhaps a reading nook by the window. Or maybe a small studio space for the watercolor painting I'd abandoned years ago. On the closet shelf, I noticed something they'd left behind, my mother's letter, still in its envelope. I took it down, held it to my heart for a moment, then placed it in my jewelry box. Some lessons once learned don't need to be revisited. My mother had given me one final gift, the permission to value myself, to insist on dignity, to stand tall in the home she had left me, and that was an inheritance beyond price. Spring came to Boise with a riot of colors. The crabapple tree in my front yard exploded in pink blossoms, and daffodils pushed through the soil in the garden beds I'd neglected the previous year. I found myself waking earlier, sleeping better, moving through my days with a lightness I hadn't felt in years. It had been 3 months since Caleb and Tiffany moved out. 3 months of rediscovering the simple pleasures of solitude. Reading late into the night without worrying about disturbing anyone, cooking only what I wanted to eat, leaving a painting project spread across the dining room table for days on end. I'd transformed the guest bedroom into an art studio, something I'd dreamed of doing since retirement but had put off for one reason or another. The morning light through the east-facing windows was perfect for watercolors, and I found myself spending hours there, brush in hand, lost in the flow of creating something beautiful simply because it brought me joy. My relationship with Caleb was healing slowly. He called every Sunday without fail, and we'd had lunch together twice. Our conversations were cautious at first, each of us carefully avoiding certain topics, but gradually we found our way back to the easy rapport we'd once shared. Tiffany remained distant. She declined invitations to join Caleb when he visited, sent perfunctory thank you notes for birthday gifts, and maintained a polite but cool demeanor during the few times we couldn't avoid each other. I'd made peace with the fact that we might never be close. Some relationships aren't meant to flourish, no matter how much water and sunshine you provide. On a warm Tuesday in April, I was in my garden, hands deep in soil, when a car pulled into my driveway. I shaded my eyes against the sun and was surprised to see Judge Delgado emerging from a sleek black sedan. "Anthony," I called, pulling off my gardening gloves. "What a nice surprise." He smiled, looking less formal than I'd ever seen him in khaki slacks and a blue button-down shirt. "I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd stop by." "Hope that's all right." "Of course. Come in for some iced tea." "I just made a pitcher." We sat on the back porch, watching birds flit between the feeders I'd hung from the old maple tree. The conversation flowed easily, books we'd both read recently, a community theater production he'd attended, my rediscovery of painting. "You seem well, Loretta," he observed after a while. "There's a glow about you that wasn't there in December." I considered this. "I feel well. More myself than I have in a long time." He nodded thoughtfully. "Your mother would be pleased. She always spoke of your spirit, your creativity. She worried that life had dimmed those qualities in you." "Life has a way of doing that," I admitted. "We make compromises, sacrifice little pieces of ourselves for others, until one day we look in the mirror and barely recognize the person looking back." "And now?" I smiled, feeling the warmth of the spring sun on my face. "Now I'm remembering who I am when I'm not trying to be what someone else needs me to be." He raised his glass in a small toast. "To remembering oneself. There's no greater gift." After a comfortable silence, he cleared his throat. "Actually, Loretta, I didn't stop by just to check on you. I have something to give you." From his pocket, he produced a small envelope, similar to the one my mother had left me, but newer. "What's this?" I asked, taking it from him. "Another letter from your mother. She left several in my keeping, each to be delivered at specific times or under specific circumstances." He smiled at my surprise. Eleanor was nothing if not thorough in her planning. With slightly trembling hands, I opened the envelope. The paper inside was covered in my mother's distinctive handwriting. "My dearest Loretta, if Anthony has given you this letter, then you have reclaimed your home and your dignity. I am so proud of you. It couldn't have been easy, especially if it involved confronting family. Now comes the part that might be even harder: learning to live for yourself. After decades of caring for others, Robert, Caleb, perhaps even me in my final years, you must now turn that care inward. This is your time, Loretta. Not to be selfish, but to be self-full. To discover what brings you joy, what ignites your passion, what makes your spirit sing. I have asked Anthony to invite you to join the Arts Council. They need someone with your sensitivity and insight. Say yes, even if it frightens you. Especially if it frightens you, remember what I always told you. It's never too late to become the person you might have been. All my love. Mom tears blurred my vision as I folded the letter. My mother, reaching across time to nudge me forward just when I needed it most. The Arts Council? I asked, looking up at Anthony. He nodded. We meet monthly. Review grant applications from local artists, organize the summer festival, sponsor workshops for children. Eleanor was our chairperson for 15 years. He leaned forward. We could use someone with your background in education and your newly rekindled artistic pursuits. I hesitated. I haven't been involved in the community like that in years. I'm not sure That's exactly why you should do it, he interrupted gently. New perspectives, fresh eyes. And besides, he added with a twinkle in his eye, your mother seems to think you'd be perfect for it. I laughed softly. She always did know what I needed before I did. So, what do you say? I took a deep breath, feeling something unfurl inside me, a readiness, a willingness to step beyond the comfortable boundaries I'd drawn around my life. Yes, I said. I'd like that very much. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. The Arts Council meetings introduced me to a diverse group of passionate, creative people, from retired professors to young gallery owners, from traditional sculptors to digital artists pushing boundaries I barely understood. I found myself energized by their conversations, their debates, their unwavering belief in the power of art to transform communities. At home, I cleared more space for my painting. What had begun as a tentative hobby blossomed into a daily practice. I wasn't creating masterpieces, but I was creating, and the act itself brought a satisfaction I'd forgotten was possible. One Sunday afternoon, Caleb stopped by unexpectedly. I was in my studio, splattered with paint, when the doorbell rang. Mom? He called as I let him in. Wow, what happened to you? I laughed, looking down at my paint-stained clothes. Art happened. Come see. I led him to the studio, watching nervously as he took in the transformed space. The easel by the window, the shelves lined with supplies. The walls hung with my modest attempts at capturing the Idaho landscape. Mom, he said slowly, these are beautiful. I had no idea you could paint like this. Neither did I admitted. It's been a journey of discovery. He picked up a small watercolor of the crabapple tree in bloom. Can I have this one? For our new place? I felt a rush of emotion. Of course. I'd be honored. We spent the afternoon together, more relaxed than we'd been in months. He told me about his new job at a tech startup, more challenging but more rewarding than his previous position. He mentioned casually that he and Tiffany were seeing a couples counselor. It's been good for us, he said, making us talk about things we used to sweep under the rug. I'm glad, I said sincerely. As he was leaving, he paused at the door. You know, Mom, I've been thinking a lot about what happened at Christmas. How things got so bad without any of us really noticing. Me too. I think... He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. I think sometimes we get so focused on what we're trying to build, a marriage, a career, a life, that we forget to check if the foundation is solid. If the people we're building with are treating us with respect. I nodded, struck by the wisdom in his observation. Anyway, he continued, I just wanted to say I'm sorry, and I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself. It couldn't have been easy. It wasn't, I acknowledged. But it was necessary. He hugged me tightly before leaving. As I watched his car pull away, I realized something profound. By refusing to be diminished any longer, I had actually given my son a gift, the example of a mother who valued herself enough to insist on being treated with dignity. That night, I wrote in my journal, a practice I'd recently resumed. Today I realized that standing up for myself wasn't selfish. It was necessary for everyone involved. Caleb needed to see that love doesn't mean accepting mistreatment. Tiffany needed boundaries, and I needed to remember my own worth. Mother always said that true strength isn't about power over others, but power within ourselves. The courage to say, this is who I am. This is what I deserve. This is where I stand. At 68, I'm finally learning what she meant. May brought warmer days and new opportunities. The Arts Council was planning its annual summer festival, and I'd been asked to coordinate the children's workshop, a series of hands-on activities designed to introduce young people to different artistic media. We thought, with your background in education, you'd be perfect for it, Miranda, the council's current chairperson explained. Of course, you'd have a budget for supplies and a team of volunteers to help. The old Loretta might have hesitated, might have worried about taking on too much responsibility. But the new Loretta, the one who was learning to say yes to life, agreed immediately. Planning the workshops gave me purpose, a reason to venture beyond my comfortable routine. I visited local schools to promote the program, met with art teachers to coordinate efforts, researched child-friendly projects that would engage a range of ages and abilities. In the process, I rediscovered the joy of teaching, the satisfaction of sharing knowledge, of witnessing that moment when a concept clicks in someone's mind. One afternoon, while picking up supplies at the craft store, I literally bumped carts with a woman reaching for the same pack of colored pencils. "Oh, I'm so sorry!" we both exclaimed simultaneously, then laughed at the coincidence. She was about my age, with short silver hair and bright blue eyes behind stylish glasses. Something about her seemed vaguely familiar. "Weren't you at the library book club last month?" she asked. "The discussion on Isabel Allende." I nodded, placing her now. "Yes. You made that insightful comment about magical realism and memory." "Helen Whitman," she said, extending her hand. "Loretta Jacobs." We chatted briefly about books, art supplies, the approaching summer. Then Helen glanced at her watch. "I hate to run, but I'm meeting friends for coffee. Would you like to join us? We're just heading to the cafe across the street." In the past, I might have declined politely, retreated to the safety of my solitary routine. But something, perhaps my mother's voice in my head, urging me toward new experiences, made me nod. I'd love to. Helen's friends, two other women, our age, named Diane and Patricia, welcomed me warmly into their circle. They were part of what they jokingly called the Late Bloomers Club, women who had discovered new passions and pursuits after retirement. Diane had become a certified yoga instructor at 62. Patricia had started a small business selling homemade jams and preserves using her grandmother's recipes. And Helen, a retired librarian, was now writing a historical novel set in early Boise. "It's about a widow who opens a boarding house during the gold rush," she explained, "based loosely on my great-grandmother's life." "That sounds fascinating," I said. "I've been rediscovering painting myself. Nothing professional, just for joy." "The best reason to do anything," Patricia declared, raising her coffee cup in a toast. The afternoon stretched pleasantly as we shared stories, laughed at each other's jokes, and discovered numerous connections. Books we'd all loved, mutual acquaintances, similar life experiences. By the time we parted ways, I had 3 new phone numbers in my contacts and invitations to both a yoga class and a writing group. Walking to my car, I felt a sense of expansion, as if my world had suddenly grown larger. For so long, my social circle had narrowed to just Caleb and, by extension, Tiffany. I'd forgotten the pleasure of female friendship, the easy camaraderie of women who understood each other's experiences without explanation. That evening, I called Judge Delgado Anthony, as I now thought of him, to update him on the Arts Council project. "It sounds like you're thriving," he said, his deep voice warm with approval. "Eleanor would be delighted." "I feel like I'm waking up," I admitted. Or maybe remembering. Parts of myself that got buried under years of just surviving. "That's exactly what your mother hoped would happen." He paused. "Actually, Loretta, I've been meaning to ask you something. The symphony is performing Dvořák next Friday. I have 2 tickets. Would you care to join me?" The question caught me off guard. Was this simply a friendly invitation or something more? Anthony had been my mother's friend, but over the past months he'd become mine as well. I enjoyed his company, his thoughtful conversation, his quiet dignity. "I'd like that very much," I said, surprising myself with how true it felt. The symphony was magnificent. Anthony picked me up in his sedan, looking distinguished in a dark suit. I'd taken extra care with my appearance, a dress I hadn't worn in years, pearl earrings that had been my mother's, a touch of lipstick. As we took our seats in the concert hall, I felt a flutter of nervousness, like a teenager on a first date. "You look lovely tonight," Anthony said quietly, confirming that this was indeed more than just a friendly outing. "Thank you," I replied, feeling a blush rise to my cheeks. It's been a while since I've dressed up for an evening out. Too long, I'd wager. The music washed over us by turns dramatic and delicate, powerful and poignant. I found myself moved nearly to tears by the beauty of it. By the way, it spoke directly to emotions I couldn't have named. Afterward, Over dessert at a small cafe nearby, Anthony and I talked about everything and nothing music. Books, memories of Boise from decades past, hopes for its future. There was an ease between us, a comfort that felt both new and familiar. "I've enjoyed this evening very much," he said as he walked me to my door later. "So have I." I hesitated, then added, "Perhaps we could do it again sometime." His smile was gentle. "I'd like nothing better." As spring turned to summer, my life continued to expand in ways I couldn't have imagined 6 months earlier. The Arts Council workshops were a success, drawing dozens of children each weekend. My friendship with Helen, Diane, and Patricia deepened through regular coffee dates and a book club we formed. And Anthony and I began seeing each other regularly: concerts, dinner, walks along the Boise River Greenbelt when the weather was fine. It wasn't the passionate romance of youth, but something equally valuable, a connection based on mutual respect, shared interests, and the wisdom that comes with age. We didn't rush. We didn't make grand declarations. We simply enjoyed discovering each other, one conversation at a time. One warm evening in late June, Caleb called with news. "Mom, Tiffany and I would like to have you over for dinner this Saturday." At our place, I hesitated. Though my relationship with Caleb had improved significantly, Tiffany had remained distant, declining all invitations to join him when he visited me. "Are you sure?" I asked cautiously. "Is Tiffany comfortable with that?" It was her idea, actually. He sounded as surprised as I felt. "The counseling has been helpful for both of us. She's been doing some thinking about how things went down." Hope fluttered cautiously in my chest. "Then I'd be happy to come." "Great. And Mom? Feel free to bring Judge Delgado if you'd like." "Tiffany and I know you've been seeing each other." I laughed softly at my son's perceptiveness. "I'll ask him." Their apartment was small but tastefully decorated, with several of my paintings displayed prominently on the walls. Tiffany greeted us at the door, her smile tentative but seemingly genuine. "Thank you for coming," she said, shaking Anthony's hand and, after a moment's hesitation, giving me a brief hug. "Dinner's almost ready. I'd brought a bottle of wine and flowers, peace offerings of a sort." She accepted them graciously, arranging the blooms in a vase that I recognized from my own collection, one of the few items she'd accepted when they moved out. Dinner was pleasant, the conversation focusing on safe topics: Caleb's job, the Arts Council Festival, a movie they'd recently seen. Anthony, with his judicial diplomacy, helped smooth over awkward moments with thoughtful questions and gentle humor. It wasn't until dessert homemade apple pie that Tiffany had baked herself, that she finally addressed the elephant in the room. "Loretta," she began, setting down her fork, "I owe you an apology. A real one, not just for show." I set down my own fork, giving her my full attention. "The way I treated you in your home was inexcusable," she continued. "I was entitled, disrespectful, and completely out of line. Our counselor helped me see that I was, well, projecting some issues from my relationship with my own mother onto you. But that's no excuse." Her voice wavered slightly, but she maintained eye contact. "I'm truly sorry for how I made you feel invisible in your own home. You deserved better." The sincerity in her voice caught me off guard. I'd come prepared for polite civility, not genuine remorse. "Thank you, Tiffany," I said softly. "That means a lot to me." "We both want to do better," Caleb added, reaching for her hand. "Build a healthier relationship with you, if you're willing to try again." I looked at them, my son and the woman he loved, both making an effort to grow, to heal, to rebuild what had been broken. "I'd like that very much," I said. As Anthony and I drove home later that night, I felt a sense of closure, of a circle completing itself. "You're quiet," he observed. "Penny, for your thoughts?" "I was just thinking about how much can change in 6 months," I said. "How lives can unravel and then reweave themselves into new patterns." He reached over to take my hand. "Your mother used to say that life is like one of those kaleidoscopes we had as children. Sometimes it takes a good shake to create a beautiful new pattern." I smiled at the apt metaphor. "She was a wise woman." "She was," he agreed. "And her daughter takes after her." As we pulled into my driveway, my house glowed warmly in the twilight. No longer a place of tension and resentment, but a sanctuary of peace and possibility. Anthony walked me to the door, kissed me gently, and bid me good night. As I watched his taillights disappear down the street, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for my mother's foresight, for Anthony's kindness, for my own courage in finally standing up for myself. Inside, I picked up the framed photo of my mother that sat on the mantelpiece. Her eyes seemed to twinkle with approval. "You were right," I whispered to her image. "It's never too late to become the person you might have been." The Summer Arts Festival transformed downtown Boise into a celebration of color and creativity. Tents lined the park, displaying everything from traditional landscapes to avant-garde sculptures. Musicians performed on small stages scattered throughout, their melodies drifting on the warm air. Food vendors offered local specialties, the sense of savory and sweet mingling enticingly. And in the heart of it all was the children's pavilion I'd helped organize, a bustling hive of activity where young people created clay sculptures, painted watercolor postcards, wove simple bracelets, and experimented with printmaking techniques. "Ms. Jacobs!" A small girl with pigtails tugged at my sleeve. "Look what I made!" She held up a watercolor painting of what might have been a cat, or possibly a very round horse. The colors bled together in that beautiful, unintentional way that only children's art can achieve. "It's wonderful, Sophie," I said, crouching down to her level. "The colors are so vibrant. Tell me about it." As she launched into an elaborate explanation involving her grandmother's cat and something about a rainbow unicorn, I felt someone watching me. Looking up, I saw Tiffany standing a few feet away, observing our interaction with an unreadable expression. "Tiffany," I said, surprised. "I didn't know you were coming today." Sophie skipped off to show her masterpiece to her parents, and Tiffany stepped closer. "Caleb mentioned you'd be here." She glanced around at the busy pavilion. "This is impressive. You organized all this?" "With a lot of help," I said modestly. "Are you enjoying the festival?" She nodded. "It's nice. Different from what I usually do on weekends, but nice." She hesitated, then added, "You're good with them." "The kids." "I was a teacher for 30 years, I reminded her. "I know, but..." She seemed to be struggling with something. "It's different seeing it in person. You have this patience, this way of making them feel heard." I wasn't sure how to respond to this unexpected observation. "Thank you." An awkward silence fell between us. Around us, children laughed and created. Volunteers guided tiny hands. Parents snapped photos of proudly displayed artwork. "I never had that," Tiffany said suddenly, her voice so low I almost missed it. "Had what?" "Someone who listened. Who made space for me to create, to express myself." She shrugged, trying to appear casual, but I caught a glimpse of old pain in her eyes. My mother was critical. Nothing was ever good enough. And art was impractical, a waste of time. The admission felt significant, a piece of herself she hadn't shared before. I thought about what Caleb had said about their counseling, about Tiffany projecting issues with her own mother onto me. "That must have been difficult," I said carefully. She nodded, her gaze fixed on a young boy meticulously applying glitter to a paper mask. "I've been thinking a lot about patterns, how we repeat them without realizing." She turned to me, her expression uncharacteristically vulnerable. "I don't want to be like her, but sometimes I hear her voice coming out of my mouth and I can't stop it." In that moment, I saw Tiffany clearly for perhaps the first time, not as my difficult daughter-in-law, but as a woman carrying her own wounds, her own unresolved hurts. "It takes awareness to break patterns," I said gently. "And courage. It sounds like you're doing that hard work." She met my eyes briefly, then looked away. "Trying to," she cleared her throat. "Anyway, I just wanted to stop by and say hello. And to see what you've been working on." "I'm glad you did." I hesitated, then took a chance. "Some of us are getting together tomorrow afternoon, a small group of women who paint together sometimes. You'd be welcome to join us if you're interested." The invitation clearly surprised her. "Oh, I'm not artistic. Neither were most of us when we started," I said. "It's not about talent. It's about expression, about creating a space where that's safe." Something flickered across her face, interest perhaps, or longing. "I'll think about it." To my surprise, Tiffany did show up the next day, hovering uncertainly at the edge of Helen's sunlit backyard where 5 of us had set up easels. She'd brought a bottle of wine as a hostess gift, clutching it like a shield. "Everyone, this is my daughter-in-law, Tiffany," I said, guiding her into the circle. "Tiffany, this is Helen, Diane, Patricia, and Margot." The women welcomed her warmly, making space, offering her a spare canvas and brushes. At first, she was stiff, self-conscious, watching rather than participating. But gradually, as the afternoon progressed and the conversation flowed easily around her, she began to relax. By the time we broke for cheese and wine, she had created a simple but striking abstract of blues and greens. "It's nothing special," she said when Helen complimented it. "Nonsense," Helen replied. "It has feeling. That's what matters." On the drive home, Tiffany was quieter than usual, thoughtful. "Thank you," she said as I pulled up to her apartment building. "For today, for including me." "Your family," I said simply. She nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. I'm starting to understand what that actually means. The reconciliation with Tiffany wasn't instantaneous or complete. There were still awkward moments, old patterns that resurfaced, misunderstandings that needed to be addressed. But there was movement, a willingness on both sides to see each other more fully, to extend grace, to build something new from the ashes of what had been burned. She began joining our painting group regularly. She wasn't a natural artist, but she approached it with unexpected humility, asking questions, accepting guidance, finding her own style through trial and error. And in that process, I saw her soften, saw glimpses of a woman I might actually grow to like. "You know what's funny?" she said one afternoon as we cleaned brushes side by side. "I spent so much time trying to control everything in your house, the furniture, the kitchen, the social calendar. And now I'm learning to just let go. To make a mess on canvas and see what happens." I smiled at the irony. "Sometimes we hold tightest to the things we're most afraid of losing control over." She considered this, then nodded slowly. "I was terrified when we moved in with you. My business was failing, Caleb had lost his job, I felt like a complete failure. So I tried to control everything I could, including you." The admission hung between us, honest and raw. "I understand that now," I said. "I just wish we could have talked about it then." "I wasn't ready to talk," she admitted. "Or listen." She rinsed a brush under the tap, watching the blue paint swirl down the drain. "I'm working on that." As summer progressed, my relationship with Anthony deepened as well. We fell into a comfortable rhythm: dinner at his place on Wednesdays, symphony or theater on Fridays when available, Sunday brunches after church. He was thoughtful, intelligent, respectful of my independence while making it clear he valued my company. One evening in late July, as we sat on my back porch watching fireflies dance in the gathering dusk, he took my hand. "Loretta," he said, his voice serious, "there's something I need to tell you." "Something about your mother." A flutter of anxiety passed through me. "What about her?" He smiled reassuringly. "Nothing bad, just something she asked me to keep to myself until the time was right." He reached into his pocket and withdrew yet another envelope. "This is the last letter she left. She was very specific about when it should be delivered. When Loretta has found her footing and her heart is open to new possibilities." With trembling fingers, I accepted the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, my mother's handwriting now as familiar to me as my own. "My dearest Loretta, if you're reading this, you've reclaimed not just your home, but yourself. And in doing so, you've opened your heart to new possibilities, perhaps even to Anthony, who has been my dear friend for many years. There is something you should know. When your father died and I was lost in grief, it was Anthony who helped me find my way back to life. Our friendship deepened into love, though we chose to keep it private. He was my companion for the last 12 years of my life, bringing me joy I never expected to find again. I tell you this not to shock you, but to give you permission. Permission to find happiness, to embrace love in its autumn form, to discover that the heart never loses its capacity for connection. It only grows more discerning with time. Anthony is a good man. He was with me at the end, holding my hand as I prepared for the journey ahead. If he has found a place in your heart, know that you have my blessing. Some might find it strange, but I find it beautiful, a continuation of love across generations. Whatever you choose, remember that joy is never inappropriate, love is never wasted, and it is never too late to open yourself to life's sweetest possibilities. All my love." Now and always, Mommy looked up at Anthony, tears blurring my vision. "You and my mother?" "You were in love," he finished gently. "Yes. We kept it private because we didn't want to complicate things or have people gossiping. And then when she became ill," his voice caught, "we cherished every moment. Why didn't she tell me?" "She wanted to. Many times. But she worried you might feel conflicted, that it might seem she was replacing your father. And then later, when she knew she was dying, she didn't want to burden you with one more emotional revelation when you were already grieving. I sat in silence, absorbing this unexpected information. It explained so much my mother's renewed vitality in her later years, the mysterious lunch appointments she'd never elaborated on, the collection of theater ticket stubs I'd found among her things after she died. "Are you angry?" Anthony asked quietly. I considered the question carefully. "No," I said finally. "Surprised, yes, but not angry. My mother deserved happiness. And so do I." He squeezed my hand. "That's what she hoped you'd say." "So all this time, your friendship with me, these dinners, the symphony, was it because of a promise to my mother?" "It began that way," he admitted. "A promise to watch over you, to be there if you needed help." "But Loretta," his eyes warm and honest met mine, "I've come to care for you deeply. For yourself. Not as Eleanor's daughter, but as the remarkable woman you are." The fireflies continued their luminous dance around us as we sat together, hands entwined, the past and present merging into something new and unexpected, a future neither of us had anticipated, but both of us now welcomed. Later that night, after Anthony had gone home, I sat in my studio, surrounded by the paintings I'd created over the past months. Landscapes, still lifes, abstracts, each one a step in my journey back to myself. On the easel was my current project, a portrait of my mother, based on a photograph taken when she was about my age. I'd captured her eyes, I thought, the wisdom in them, the quiet strength, the capacity for joy. "You sly fox," I said to her image, laughing softly through my tears. "You had it all planned out, didn't you?" The portrait seemed to smile back at me, neither confirming nor denying, keeping her secrets as she had in life. I added a touch more light to her eyes, a subtle warmth that spoke of love and secrets and the pleasure of a life fully lived, right until the end. Autumn painted Boise in rich golds and crimsons. The air turned crisp, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and wood smoke. My garden yielded its final harvest: late tomatoes, winter squash, herbs to dry and preserve for the coming cold months. 1 year had passed since that fateful Christmas Eve when I'd finally found the courage to stand up for myself. 1 year of transformation, of rediscovery, of building a life that felt authentically mine. The house had transformed as well. Gone were the generic decorations Tiffany had insisted on, replaced with items that reflected my personality and passions. Bookshelves filled with beloved volumes, walls adorned with my own paintings and those of my friends, comfortable furniture arranged for conversation rather than show. My relationship with Anthony had deepened into something precious and sustaining. We didn't live together. We both valued our independence too much for that, but we shared our lives in meaningful ways. Weekend trips to art galleries in neighboring towns. Quiet evenings reading by the fire. Long conversations about everything and nothing. The easy companionship of two people who had nothing to prove and everything to share. Caleb and Tiffany had made strides in their marriage. The counseling continued, and with it came greater honesty, better communication, more realistic expectations. They'd both grown, Caleb finding his voice, Tiffany softening her sharp edges. Our family dinners, now held twice monthly, had evolved from tense obligations to genuine gatherings marked by conversation and laughter. Tiffany and I had reached a place I'd never thought possible, not the forced closeness of mother and daughter, but a mutual respect that occasionally blossomed into genuine warmth. She continued attending our painting group, her style evolving into bold, emotional pieces that revealed a depth I hadn't recognized in her before. "Art saved me," she confessed one day as we prepared lunch in my kitchen, a space we now shared comfortably. "It gave me a place to put all those feelings I didn't know what to do with." "It can do that," I agreed. "If we let it." She arranged cucumber slices on a platter, her movements precise. "I've been thinking about teaching. Art therapy, maybe. For kids who've been through difficult situations." The revelation surprised me. "That's a significant change from online retail," she nodded. "I've been volunteering at the community center, just helping with their after-school art program. It feels right somehow, like maybe this is what I was supposed to be doing all along." I watched her, this woman who had once seemed so foreign to me, so difficult to understand. "I think you'd be wonderful at that." She looked up, clearly pleased by the compliment. "Really? Really? You found a kind of empathy through your own struggles. That's valuable." especially for children who need someone to see them, to make space for their expression. A comfortable silence fell between us as we finished preparing the meal. Outside, golden leaves drifted past the window, the cycle of seasons continuing its eternal rhythm. "Can I ask you something?" Tiffany said suddenly. "Something personal?" "Of course. Are you and Judge Delgado Anthony going to get married?" The question caught me off guard. "We haven't discussed it. Why do you ask?" She shrugged. "Just curious. You seem happy together." "We are," I acknowledged. "But at our age, marriage isn't necessarily the goal. We're content with what we have: companionship, mutual respect, shared interests." I smiled. "And the freedom to go home to our own houses at the end of the evening." "That sounds nice, actually," she admitted. "Knowing what you want and not worrying about what others expect." "It's taken me a lifetime to get here," I said. "To understand that happiness isn't about following a prescribed path, but about being true to yourself and treating others with kindness along the way." She nodded thoughtfully. "I think I'm starting to get that too." Later that afternoon, as we all gathered around my dining table, Caleb and Tiffany, Anthony, Helen and her husband, Diane and Patricia, I found myself pausing to absorb the moment. The golden autumn light slanting through windows, the animated conversation flowing around shared food, the ease of being among people who knew me, valued me, respected me. Anthony caught my eye across the table and smiled, a private moment of connection amid the lively group. Later, as we cleared the dishes together, he whispered, "Happy?" "Yes," I said simply. "Very." The following week brought an unexpected phone call from Miranda, the Arts Council chairperson. "Loretta, I have a proposition for you," she began. "The council is sponsoring a new initiative, a gallery showcase featuring local artists over 60. We're calling it Second Bloom. Would you consider submitting some of your work?" I nearly dropped the phone. "My work? But I'm just a hobbyist. I've never exhibited before." "That's exactly the point," Miranda explained. "To highlight talent that might otherwise go unrecognized, the late-in-life creators who deserve celebration." The idea both thrilled and terrified me. My paintings displayed publicly, open to criticism, judgment, evaluation. I don't know, Miranda. I'm not sure I'm ready for that kind of exposure. "Just think about it," she urged. "The show opens in January. You have time to decide and to create something special, if you choose to participate." That evening, I mentioned the invitation to Anthony as we walked along the river, the sunset painting the water in shades of copper and gold. "You should do it," he said without hesitation. "You think so? What if my work isn't good enough?" He stopped, turning to face me. "Loretta, when will you accept that you are more talented, more capable, more extraordinary than you allow yourself to believe?" His faith in me was both touching and challenging. "It's hard to see ourselves clearly," I admitted. "We're so close to our own flaws, our own doubts." "Then trust those who love you to reflect back your true image." He took my hands in his. "The woman I see is remarkable, brave enough to reclaim her dignity when it was threatened, creative enough to build a new life from the fragments of the old, generous enough to forgive those who hurt her." His words warmed me more than any praise for my artistic skill could have. "When you put it that way." "Say yes to the exhibition," he encouraged. "Not because your work will be judged worthy by strangers, though I believe it will, but because the act of sharing it is an affirmation, a statement that your voice matters, your perspective has value." Put that way, how could I refuse? The following months were a blur of creativity and preparation. I decided to create a new series specifically for the Exhibition 8 paintings, exploring the concept of home, of belonging, of finding one's place in the world. Each canvas captured a moment of my journey: the kitchen where I'd finally said, "Enough." The garden where I'd reconnected with simple pleasures. The studio where I'd rediscovered my creative voice. The porch where Anthony and I had shared my mother's final letter. The work consumed me, bringing both frustration and exhilaration. There were days when nothing went right, when the colors muddied and the composition refused to balance. But there were also moments of flow, of perfect connection between vision and execution, when time seemed to suspend itself and the painting emerged as if it had always existed, waiting to be revealed. Through it all, my circle of support expanded and strengthened. Helen and the painting group offered technical advice and encouragement. Caleb helped build frames for the canvases, his hands skilled like his father's had been. Even Tiffany contributed, her eye for design helping me arrange the series for maximum impact. Christmas came again, but how different from the previous year. Instead of tension and manipulation, there was warmth and genuine connection. We gathered at my house, a smaller group this time. Just Caleb and Tiffany, Anthony, and Judge Delgado's daughter and her family, who had become friends as our relationship deepened. The meal was a collaborative effort, each person contributing a dish, sharing the work and the pleasure equally. We exchanged thoughtful gifts, told stories, played charades by the fire. When Tiffany raised her glass for a toast, her words brought tears to my eyes. "To Loretta," she said, "who taught all of us what real strength looks like. Not the kind that dominates or controls, but the kind that stands firm in its truth and inspires others to find theirs." January arrived, bringing with it the opening night of the Second Bloom exhibition. The gallery was transformed for the event, soft lighting highlighting the diverse works of 12 artists who had discovered or rediscovered their creative voices in the second half of life. My series, titled simply Homecoming, occupied a prime wall space. Seeing my paintings displayed professionally properly lit, beautifully framed, accompanied by an artist's statement I'd labored over for weeks, filled me with a complex mixture of pride, vulnerability, and disbelief. "They look amazing," Caleb said, standing beside me as guests began to arrive. "Mom, I had no idea you had this in you." "Neither did I admitted. For the longest time. The evening passed in a blur of introductions, congratulations, questions about my process, and inspiration. To my astonishment, a small red sold dot appeared beneath one of my paintings before the night was half over. Then another. By closing time, 5 of the 8 had found new homes, including the centerpiece, my portrait of the kitchen where my journey had begun, titled The Breaking Point. As the crowd thinned, Miranda approached with a distinguished-looking woman in a silk scarf. "Loretta, I'd like you to meet Elaine Winters. She owns a small gallery in Seattle specializing in emerging older artists. She's very interested in your work." What followed was a conversation that would have seemed impossible a year earlier, about artistic influences, future projects, the possibility of a solo exhibition in the coming fall. I found myself speaking with a confidence that surprised me, sharing my vision without apology or minimization. Later, as Anthony and I celebrated over champagne in my living room, he raised his glass. "To Eleanor," he said softly, who knew exactly what her daughter needed. I touched my glass to his. "And to us, who found each other because of her." He set down his glass and took my hands. "Loretta, there's something I've been wanting to ask you." My heart quickened. "Yes?" "Not marriage," he clarified with a smile, reading my expression. "I think we're both past the point of needing those formal commitments. But I've been thinking about the future, about making the most of the time we have left." "What did you have in mind?" "Travel," he said, his eyes lighting up. "I've always wanted to see the great art museums of Europe. The Louvre, the Prado, the Uffizi. To stand before the masterpieces we've only seen in books." The idea took my breath away. "That sounds wonderful. I've already spoken to my daughter about watching my house. And with your exhibition success, perhaps the timing is right." He squeezed my hands. "What do you say? Shall we have an adventure together?" I thought about the woman I'd been just 1 year ago, invisible, diminished, afraid to claim space even in my own home. And I thought about the woman I'd become, an artist, a mentor, a woman who had learned to value herself enough to insist that others do the same. "Yes," I said, joy bubbling up like the champagne in our glasses. "Let's have an adventure." The next morning, I woke early, as was still my habit. The house was quiet, peaceful. Outside, a light snow had fallen overnight, transforming the garden into a pristine white canvas. I made my way to the studio, where the remaining 3 paintings from my exhibition hung on the wall. They were good work. I could acknowledge that now without feeling immodest. They told a story of loss and reclamation, of dignity regained, of a life reimagined. On the easel was a blank canvas, a new beginning, a new story waiting to be told. I thought of my mother, whose wisdom and foresight had guided me even after she was gone. I thought of Anthony, whose respect and affection had helped me see myself more clearly. I thought of Caleb and Tiffany, who had stumbled but ultimately chosen growth over resentment. And I thought of my own journey from invisible to seen, from silenced to heard, from diminished to empowered. Standing before the blank canvas, brush in hand, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for the past and anticipation for the future. At 69, my life was not winding down, but opening up rich with possibilities I had never imagined. I dipped my brush into paint the color of sunrise and made the first stroke bold, confident, full of promise. This was not an ending, but a continuation. Not a conclusion, but a threshold. The best was yet to come.